starts with a sound so faint, you almost convince yourself it's nothing. A soft thump from the attic, maybe a loose board or the house settling. That's what they told themselves. This family in their quiet suburban home. But the sounds didn't stop. They grew. What began as a whisper became a conversation. Footsteps, not the light scurry of a mouse, but slow, deliberate, heavy footsteps, pacing back and forth, directly above their heads. Every night, like clockwork, the performance would begin. They'd be settled in for the evening, watching TV or reading. And then, thump, scrape, drag. The noises were becoming more confident, more purposeful. It was no longer just the sound of a house breathing. It was the sound of something living in its lungs. The family dog, a usually calm golden retriever, would suddenly leap to its feet. A low, guttural growl rumbling in its chest, its eyes fixed on the ceiling. It saw, or rather, it sensed, something they couldn't. Then other things started happening. The lights in the hallway leading to the attic stairs would flicker and die, plunging them into darkness. A fine layer of dust would rain down from the sealed attic door, as if something heavy had just been dropped right on top of it. They tried to rationalize it: faulty wiring, old construction. But the timing was too perfect, too synchronized with the nightly symphony from above. The fear was a seed, planted in Nangihove minds, and with every strange occurrence, it grew roots. One evening, after a particularly loud crash that sounded like furniture being thrown across the room, they decided they couldn't ignore it any longer. Armed with a heavy-duty flashlight and a growing sense of dread, the father and his teenage son stood at the bottom of the pull-down attic stairs. The air around the attic door was cold, unnaturally so. It was a pocket of winter in the middle of their warm, cozy home. With a deep breath, the father pulled the cord. The stairs unfolded with a groan, revealing a square of absolute blackness. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, particles of dust dancing in the light. As they climbed, the cold intensified, seeping into their clothes, chilling them to the bone. The attic was exactly as they'd left it years ago, a cluttered graveyard of forgotten things. Old boxers, holiday decorations, a dusty rocking horse. But something was wrong. Things had been moved. A stack of boxers that was once neatly in a corner was now toppled over. An old armchair was dragged to the center of the room, facing the entrance, as if someone had been sitting there, waiting. As they cautiously stepped onto the wooden floorboards, their flashlight beam swept across the room. That's when they saw them. Scratches, deep gouges in the wooden floor, near a far dark corner. They weren't old. The wood inside the marks was raw and fresh. They looked like they were made by something with long, sharp claws, something that had been digging, or maybe trying to claw its way out. Or in the sun, standing near the back, suddenly froze. He felt a puff of air on the back of his neck, warm and moist, like someone breathing. Espun around his heart hammering against his ribs, but there was nothing there. Just shadows and dust. "Dad?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Did you just—" But his father was across the room, examining the scratches. He was alone, or so he thought. A sudden, frantic scrambling sound erupted from the corner they had just been looking at, followed by a low, menacing growl that seemed to vibrate through the floor. It was a guttural, animalistic sound, but it had a strange, almost human quality to it. Panik, set, in. They didn't wait to see what it was. They scrambled back towards the opening, fumbling down the rickety stairs, not daring to look back. They slammed the attic door shut, their breath coming in ragged gasps. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a slow, heavy thump echoed from above, directly on the other side of the door. And another, and another. Something was testing it, pushing against it. That night, sleep was impossible. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind, was the creature from the attic. Desperate for answers, they set up a small security camera in the upstairs hallway, pointed directly at the attic door. They went to bed, but not to sleep. They just waited, listening to the silence, which was now more terrifying than the noise. The next morning, They replayed the footage. 4 hours. It was nothing. Just an empty, silent hallway. Then, at exactly 3:07 a.m., it happened. The attic door, which they had securely latched, began to move. Slowly, silently, it creaked open, inch by inch, revealing that same patch of impenetrable darkness. They held their breath, their eyes glued to the screen. A shape began to emerge from the blackness. It was dark, humanoid, and impossibly tall and thin. It unfolded itself from the attic opening, its long limbs moving in a jerky, unnatural way. It didn't come down the stairs. It simply peeked its head out, its form silhouetted against the dim light of the hallway. For a full minute, it just stayed there, its head slowly turning, scanning the hallway below. It seemed to look directly into the camera lens. Then, as silently as it appeared, it retracted back into the darkness, and the attic door slowly swung shut. It was in that horrifying moment that the family understood. The noises, the cold spots, the moving objects, it wasn't a haunting. It wasn't a ghost. It was a resident. Whatever was living in their attic wasn't trying to hide from them. It wasn't trapped. It was watching them. It was studying their routines, learning their fears. The attic wasn't its prison, it was its nest. And every single night, it was getting a little more comfortable, a little more curious, and a little bit closer. The question was no longer what was in the attic. The question was, when would it decide to come downstairs for good?